Hello, welcome to the XDA podcast, and we're back after quite a long hiatus. We've been very busy. You probably followed the XDA portal if you're watching this. We've been busy over there, and we're here to kick off the podcast again. So, hello, I'm Mario Sarafero, editor-in-chief at XDA-Developers.com, Flashaholic in recovery, and I'm joined here today by...
Well, I'm Corey Fiak. I am Codisms Dev on Twitter and Android developer.
Daniel Marchena, Ultimax98, and I'm an XDA portal writer.
Eric Hulse at Simplistic on Twitter, and I'm an XDA portal writer.
All right, so that's all of us. Let's jump right into the topics this week. The first topic that we wanted to talk about is going to be the Pixel phone. So we've learned a bit of news about the new phones that we have coming, the Marlin and Sailfish phones from HTC, and specifically that they're not going to be called Nexus phones anymore. The rumor now is that they're going to be using Google's Pixel line. What do you guys think about that, and what are the implications of why Google has chosen this specific name rebranding?
Well, first of all, we got to give props to Daniel here. He predicted this back in April. So good job, Daniel. Yay.
But I mean, honestly, I guess I'll go and start with the conversation. I think this is a great idea. I've posted on Reddit a couple of times in some of the threads about my thoughts about why I think it's a great idea that Google is moving to the Pixel line and kind of removing these two phones, at least from Nexus. I don't think Nexus is dead. I just don't think these two phones are going to be the Nexus phones. And I think it's good for Google branding. You know, we've seen information that Google's going to be locking the bootloaders possibly on carriers. We saw that out of the Sailfish dump from Nate Bennis. He had posted about that the bootloader's locked if it's purchased from a carrier. You know, and we're also seeing closed source items in the system UI as well as the settings menu, Google specific things. So I think that moving to Google branding is giving Google the ability to do a lot more without having to fall under that Nexus branding and immediately fall under the stereotype that everybody's going to put them in. Oh, everything needs to be, you know, open source, and, you know, you can't close this off, and you can't go through carriers because it's a Nexus, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I mean, I think this is going to be a completely different product from the Nexus line, and we can't confuse the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And you guys remember the interview with Sundar
yeah.
Pichai. Well, he said basically that they're going to look for ways to incorporate more features and kind of basically shake up the traditional Nexus experience that we've been waiting for. I don't know if you guys remember that kicked off a huge debate about stock Android and what it means and whether it's dying or whether it even matters. But I think I agree with you, Daniel. Having the Pixel branding definitely allows them to incorporate a lot more things without kind of getting any kind of judgment from the Android community and kind of just a way to start fresh, you know. It is interesting to see that, of course, HTC is still building this, and it looks very similar to the A9, which is kind of a pity. We can jump on that later, but they still don't seem to. I mean, we can perhaps debate whether that decision about the body was entirely made by Google and whether they, you know, checked the designs and figure out that this would be the best way to go with the A9 similar design, the HTC design language. But even then, we should expect Google to have more control over both the hardware and the software with this Pixel branding.
I mean, I've got a Pixel C, and it's a pretty good tablet. It's a lot better than the Nexus 9. I don't know if that has anything to do with branding or whatever, but I think there's a fairly established look to a Pixel. I've got both the Pixel Chromebooks as well. Yeah. And you know what you get, right? You get a light bar, you get aluminum, and you get clean software, I guess. So I'm excited. At the end of the day, I don't really care what it's called. I just would like to see something about it. Yeah. Like something official.
Yeah, and you know, about the light bar, that's something that we're not seeing on the leaks.
No.
Yeah.
You know, so it may not follow that design language. You know, something I was thinking about too when you were actually mentioning Sundar's speech. Sundar was actually, I believe he said the word Nexus a couple of times. So that tells me that maybe this whole Pixel branding is something that is fairly new. or late in the ball game as far as how they were going to be branding it, and they weren't sure, a couple of months back, or even when they started with HTC, which is why we might not see that same design language from the Pixel or the Pixel C move over to these phones.
Oh, it could be like Android Silver, where it's something that changed late in the game, like you're saying.
Yeah, precisely. It could be. I mean, there's obviously been signs of Google making these kind of decisions. Of course, Android Silver, which apparently got canned, and they had to change up I think it was the Nexus 6.
Right.
And the Pixel C itself. The Pixel C itself was, from what we understand, it was going to be an entirely different user experience than what we ended up getting. So who knows? You might be right. Either way, it's sad that we haven't seen anything about that light bar. I think that's one of the, it's kind of just like, at this point, it's one of the things that comes to mind when we think Pixel.
Sure.
And the aluminum body as well. It doesn't seem to follow kind of that design language. But even then, who knows? Because, we might see new Pixel devices, which might kind of assimilate and then have the same kind of flow. Either way, I think this is really smart for them in order to kind of touch up not the Nexus experience anymore, but the experience that Google can offer, and include new features that won't necessarily appear in other devices, and basically go all out in their vision of Android without necessarily being constrained by the Nexus experience that has to be more representative of what the OEMs get to modify.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much summed up that topic, and it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with that, especially what's still up in the air with the Nexus program, to see are we still going to see Nexus devices, or are they phasing that out and transitioning to Pixel? There's been some other things that have happened here, specifically with IFA 2016. We're seeing some new devices. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the Asus ZenWatch 3 was announced. It looks like a pretty stylish watch designed for Android Wear 2.0. We've got a few extra buttons on it. What do you guys think of this one?
Well, I think it looks great as far as the design goes. It's still kind of sad to see that Android Wear is not quite evolving in the hardware side. Sure, we're getting this new Snapdragon processor that's supposedly optimized for Android Wear. A preliminary comparison with the specs does not really tell us exactly how. It doesn't look particularly remarkable when compared to the Snapdragon 400, that it's just a tried and true champ in this game. But even then, Asus does promise, a better battery life. The design looks excellent. We're starting to see all of this Gorilla Glass scratch resistance SR Plus for wearables, and that's pretty exciting. I wish I had that on my Note 7. But other than that, I think it looks gorgeous, and I actually want to try it out. I'm going to go back to Android Wear because right now I'm using the Gear S2. So. Right.
Yeah, and I think specifically with the battery, I'm really excited for the quick charge. So they claim that you can put it on for 15 minutes, get 60% battery. And I can't tell you how many times I realized that I forgot to charge my watch over the night, and I just want to toss it on the charger for 15 minutes as I'm getting ready to head out the door. That'd be a really nice use case. And quite frankly, the reason is with this Huawei watch, if you put it on the charger, it's magnetic, and you have to get the contact points just right.
I mean, the charger is downright terrible for the Huawei watch. It's the worst part about it by far.
Right. Yeah, I think the Asus has the same kind of charger, though. I know the old Zen watches did. But what's also pretty cool about the Asus that they're doing, and I didn't know they did this with the old ones, is they have like a little battery pack you can pop on the bottom of it that makes it a little bit thicker. So you can still wear the watch and give it another, 200 milliamp hours of battery. So that's a little bit more than half of its original battery life. So, you could theoretically go 3 or 4 days on this thing on one charge if you're pretty safe with it. But, when you were saying earlier, Mario, about Android Wear not developing too much, I kind of disagree with that. Where the specs aren't improving a whole lot, I think especially with the Zen watch, we're seeing, it's got 2.5D curved glass. I think that's the first time that we've ever seen that on an Android Wear device. We've got the quick charging on this. And it's got the 3 buttons. We know the 3 buttons are rumored to be with the new Nexus watches that are, I don't even know if they're going to be called Nexus watches anymore. But the Google watches that are coming out have that 3-button design. The Urbane LTE has the 3-button design. So that's something Google's moving towards. with these devices. So, you know, I mean, I think they're still keeping, it's a watch. You know, you can't deviate too far away from, you know, from the basis that is a watch. But I think we're actually seeing a little bit of movement as far as the things that they're adding into them, and it's evolving, but it's evolving slowly.
I think this is the first Android Wear watch with an ambient light sensor and no flat tire and AMOLED, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Which
I didn't know
a
it had
pretty
an
good
ambient
combo.
light sensor.
Yeah, I'm looking at the specs right now. It's got one of those. It's also got 2-finger touch called out. I don't know if that means anything, but it's written down.
I do like the shortcuts, though. You know, the shortcuts, if you can tie them to applications, one of the most annoying parts about Android Wear is just like, you know, I actually kind of used to like it more when Hangouts would be just more notification focused on Android Wear and being able to, you know, track the whole conversation straight from the notification. The application on Android Wear, Hangouts app is good, but, you know, having to go to the app drawer and launch it every time you want to monitor chats and stuff, I think that's where those shortcuts will become useful. And I see your point regarding the hardware, but what I mean is hardware that really enables Android Wear to do more. You know, for example, the comparison that I would like to make is, you know, the Gear S2, in particular the one that I have right now, is just very, very decked out in terms of hardware. Of course, it's got that 3G radio, it's got GPS, it's got NFC. You know, Samsung Pay already works on smartwatches, which is great. Funnily enough, I don't think the update came out for mine yet, which is the 3G variant. So for some reason you have it on the Wi-Fi variant, but not the 3G variant. But even then, you know, I think that on that specific front, I think that the Gear S2 was ahead of its time. And I think all of Samsung's Gear watches were ahead of their time. I think even the first Gear, which was, I mean, it was a piece of crap. It was just the ugliest watch, you know, but it had a lot of hardware in it. And I just would want Android Wear to kind of like reach a standard where all the watches have all these hardware components so that the platform can really take off, because it's going to be really hard for developers or even Google itself to make use of these hardware features if only a couple devices get it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I guess since we're going into the Gear S3, I guess we'll kind of merge the Gear S3 and the ZenWatch together here in the same conversation, because the Gear S3 was also announced. And like you said, that thing is decked out, building on top of what the Gear Watch or Gear S2 has. I have one of those as well, the Wi-Fi one. You know, it adds MST. I believe they also added a whole bunch of different sensors into it as well. For health tracking. The barometer and something else was added into it. But the unfortunate side of the Gear S3 is it's now a colossal monster. I mean, this is a big watch.
Yeah.
Big.
And that was one of my favorite things about the original Gear S2. I mean, I love my Gear S2 to just throw it on and have around the house. It's not going to bang into things. It's really low profile, stays small, and it's just there. Whereas this one's taking more of the style like the Huawei, or like maybe the Urbane, where it's a fairly large watch on your wrist. But they are throwing all the features into it, and they're going to give whatever Apple comes out with next week, they're going to give them a run for the money regarding features and specs. It's supposed to last 3 to 4 days on a single battery charge. I mean, it's pretty much got everything you could want in a watch.
Yeah, I think that the Gear S2 is kind of underrated. Of course, it got a lot of attention due to the UI and the way you can operate it with the wheel. It is nice, but really it's just the fact that it feels more of a... you know, one of the problems with Android Wear, I feel, is that there's really not... I didn't find too much use for stuff like notifications, but on the Gear S2, the app ecosystem is really small, but especially the Samsung stuff is really polished. So I do find myself using S-Health a lot on the Gear S2 just to check things up. The messaging app, the phone app. I've even taken a few phone calls on the phone and began phone calls really easily through going through the phone book app. And
you know what I found myself doing that I was surprised by was actually using the keyboard on the Gear S2.
Yeah,
it's not
I know.
Totally terrible. You can actually type something out on it.
I know. It's not completely awful. You have, of course, you have the stock one, which is, you know, have the number, the
T9.
one.
I mean, it's like a flashback to 2005 for me. You know, I was a pro at T9 back in the day.
I know, and it's actually pretty fast. You know, I think that it's kind of one of those things where the input is kind of behind the realization of the input is behind your actual input. But even then, if you're a fast typer, you can just type it out and then it'll catch up on its own, kind of like the TouchWiz keyboard on the Note 7, which shouldn't do that. It shouldn't do that, but it does that. But yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I actually thought that that it was going to be useless, but I that's one of the things that I love as well. It's just, when I was using, especially early on when the voice recognition of Underwear was terrible, and you wanted to reply to a text message, you needed to know, to have studied up what you were going to reply, because the thing would not wait for you. And
Right,
with the
yep.
Gear S2, it waits for you, and it doesn't send it until you actually want it to send. And it's actually pretty good voice recognition, and you can change the language on the fly from that very same screen, which to most people it's not a big deal, but to me, when I have to reply messages to my parents who speak Spanish, my family, people in Argentina, it's unbelievably useful, and the speech recognition is just as good in Spanish as it is in English.
Yeah, I like the keyboard too, and I don't know if you guys have played with Android Wear 2.0 yet, but I had that on my Huawei watch for a while, and well, the dev preview was really broken, which kind of surprises me that the ZenWatch 3 is shipping with it. It was really broken, but it did have the keyboard, and the keyboard wasn't T9 like the S2 is, which I love. It was a full-fledged keyboard, but it was surprisingly easy because it had swipe on it, and the swipe was pretty knowledgeable as far as what you were typing, and it syncs your keyboard between your phone and your watch. So there are a lot of nifty features, and Android's catching up on that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
It's actually borrowing a lot from the Gear S2, I feel. First of all, the black UI. I never really understood why they wanted to go with a white UI, with a light. I mean, I guess I do because it came out around the time of Material Design. But even then, it just makes so much more sense, I think, to have a high contrast black interface on a watch. And
Well, even then, though, the interface isn't black. It's
not
material
quite
dark.
black. Yeah, it's very dark. But even then, a lot of the elements, the way you scroll through lists, the way, for example, that the items, when you scroll through items in round screens, the way they adjust around the corner, very much like on the Gear. A lot of things like that I think is good, but like I said, I think that the Gear S2 was ahead of its time. It's just a shame that Tyson, the app ecosystem, didn't really take off. There's a few apps, and you can do everything that you can do on Android Wear. You can just do it worse. But even then, on Android Wear, the apps are not, they're not brilliant either. So that's just a situation with smartwatches. And like I said, I think that, if the hardware keeps improving and it becomes more standardized, then we can, begin talking about, serious adoption of mobile payments on the watch. I know that many people, probably you, Eric, don't want to pay with your watch, but I think it's still cool. There's, for example, many situations. And in fact, just recently, I went out running and I wanted to pass by the store and buy something on my way back. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I had Samsung Pay on this. Then the next week, Samsung Pay came out, but it didn't come out for my watch in particular. But anyway, I think that those things could be useful.
So you went somewhere without a telephone?
Yeah, because this thing is standalone. It's great.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they decided to put MST on the watch. I mean, that's when I had what was the first phone to have that? Was that the S6?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when they came out with Samsung Pay and enabled the MST, it was really fun because it's almost like magic. Like now it's kind of lost a little bit of that because more people are using it. But it really is, it is beneficial. You'll have people who will say, well, it's quicker to just swipe your card. And while that's true, now that we have these PIN cards you got to put in, those take 10, 15 seconds sometimes. So Samsung Pay can help there. And the biggest benefit of mobile payments is security. You're not transmitting your primary identifiable information to the merchant. So I think, hey, if we can make it more convenient, put it on a watch, it's kind of interesting to see. And I don't know that I expected seeing that from Samsung. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, they had... Oh, you can go ahead, Mario.
No, I think that I think still some things have to change to adapt to that. Just like the fact that you go to a restaurant and they take your credit card to the back room in order to to make the payment. And obviously, you're not going to give them your phone, much less your watch. It's like instead of putting the credit card, you just leave your watch in there. No, but it's true. It's great, and I had a lot of fun using it.
Do we know how much the S3 is going to cost?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I don't believe we have any pricing information on the S3. We do know the ZenWatch the ZenWatch 3 is going to be $229, which is a pretty attractive
cheap. Exactly.
price point for such a good-looking device. I can imagine that the S3 is going to have to be more than that.
Yeah,
I mean, the Asus watch definitely punches above that price range, I think. I mean, it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Samsung's going to probably land in the 350 range. I think that's where the original S2 was, 350, and then wasn't it 450 for the GSM model?
Is there only the Wi-Fi, or is there only the LTE model, or do they still have the Wi-Fi?
They still have the Wi-Fi. The Gear S3 is the Wi-Fi model. The Gear S3 Frontier is going to be the
the
LTE
classic
one. Yeah. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, too, is they're actually, I had heard that they're not discontinuing the Gear S2 at this time. So
still
we
should
updates,
see. I think.
Yeah. So, well, actually, I think they're still going to be producing them as well. And I can't remember where I read it, Anintech or Ars Technica. I can't remember. But they said that devices will still be open, whether or not they're going to take like a Moto X approach, like Lenovo's doing, where we're keeping it, but they don't really care about it. But it would be nice if Samsung kept the S2 around and had a watch for $150, and then hit 300 and so on.
Yeah.
And I think, like you guys were talking about mobile payments as well, I think a lot of things have to change, especially in the United States, in order for mobile payments to become a real thing. Walmart is now blocking Samsung Pay from working. My local grocery store, Publix, is blocking Samsung Pay from working properly. So they're finding ways around even MST. So that's kind of annoying. But I think they needed to go toe-to-toe against Apple, and I don't blame them. I mean, Samsung's always, thrown everything at the wall and seen what sticks. And the S2, I think, was one of those rare situations where it stuck, and it stuck really well, and they just kind of built on top of that. I just still wish it was a little bit smaller. Yeah,
I still think the greatest feature of the Gear S2 and S3 is that rotating bezel. I mean, that really is a unique UI thing, and it's very clever, and it works very well. So I'd like to see that elsewhere.
They said they're improving on it as well, as far as you'll be able to dismiss notifications and phone calls from the bezel. So that'll be nice if you can't touch your screen or you're wearing gloves or something like that. Samsung's always been great for making sure their devices work in all environments, the glove modes on the screens and stuff. So, for people in the, in the north and you have gloves on, you can't really touch your screen. You'll be able to just turn your bezel and, dismiss calls and notifications and stuff. And going back to the ZenWatch 3, this is the beginning of the Snapdragon 2100 that we're starting to see go into devices. So we should start seeing a lot of them come up. I'm excited to see the 2100. Asus says that it's a 25% efficiency improvement over the Snapdragon 400.
Yeah, I mean, that watch just all around seems great. I mean, AMOLED, light sensor, you're talking about efficiency, battery life, quick charge. I mean, I'm buying one. It's that easy.
Price. I mean, the price, I think that's something that was really needed in Android Wear. Let's really hope it does come out at 230, 250 even, would be great. Especially when Android Wear came out, it was grossly overpriced considering the watches were disgusting. And then the Moto 360 came out, and it came out, I think it was like $300, perhaps more. And I loved my Moto 360, but you compare that hardware with the hardware that we have now, and it's like, wow, I can't believe that this came out at $300 just a couple of years ago. It's just like very. I can't really describe the screen. It's a little bit of everything, especially when you compare it to the Huawei watch, which is still pretty expensive. But now you can get it at 250 very, very, very easily, and you can get it for 200 at various sales too.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it for 178. And going back to like you said about the Gen 1 Moto 360, that definitely was overpriced. A lot of the first gen, Android Wear devices were overpriced. And kind of speaking about overpriced devices, that brings us to our next IFA, thank you for the transition. Sony, they announced the ZX or the XZ, or one variant of that, as well as the Compact. What do you guys think about those two phones? I guess they're not continuations of the line that they have right now, the Z line. But
they don't know where they're going.
Yeah, they're new models again within 6 months. I don't understand Sony.
They had the X, and now they have this one. And I think that the saddest part, and I'm sure a lot of people pointed this out at this point, it's the fact that the Compact line is no longer a mini flagship. They downgraded the processor, which it's a very power efficient processor. Don't get me wrong; it's still a very good processor, especially because the thing's going to be running at 720p anyway. But even then, feeling that you're not getting the most out of your buck in that regard. And oh my God, the bezels! Can they please reduce the bezels on those phones?
I think the ZX looks great. I don't think I'd ever buy one because it's outrageously expensive for what you get, but I do think it looks better than the Z series. You know, I think they've rounded it and made it a little bit more modern looking, but I mean, they won't sell any of these.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, the looks. I mean, it really eschews the Nokia lines as well as the Nextbit Robin. I mean, they are both gorgeous phones. I'm not crazy about the flash placement on the compact. It's kind of odd sitting next to the camera, but I love the ZX where it sits right underneath the camera. I mean, it is a really, really nice looking phone. But, you know, we still don't know what their United States plans are. You know, we're all in the U.S. here. I know a lot of people international, they love Sonys. But here in the U.S., Sony has not shown a real care about our market. And it's sad, too, because I think that they would sell pretty well. Sony has a pretty good name here, especially in televisions and audio equipment in the United States. You know, so it's sad to see them abandoning this market.
I think we can predict what their plan is too, though, right? They're going to put these on Amazon one day and you'll be able to buy them for a large amount of money, and that's going to be the end of it. They'll never advertise them. You know, they'll never make any real push here. And they haven't done that for the last, what, like 5 or 6 generations? I mean,
yeah. I think
the Z2 was a great phone for the time, right? I mean, it was actually competitive spec-wise, and it was pretty handsome, and it was
still
capable.
Pretty good today. I know so many people that use a C3,
and the Z3 has maybe had the best software support of any non-Nexus device ever. I mean, that thing is still getting nougat.
Sony
you know,
Open
it's
Device,
crazy.
Yeah, Sony Open Device program brought so much good and so much joy to those devices. I mean, it had the the nougat developer preview, and it's going to get amazing nougat ROMs too. And it had great battery life too. It had the Snapdragon 801 still holds up today. It's crazy. It's sad that it's being dropped, but
the last time that they made any sort of marketing towards us was when they were going to launch that phone with Verizon and then didn't.
Yeah,
remember? I mean, that was the Z4V or whatever, though. The one that was like a custom variant, and it was just like the old casing with the new internals, and it was, I mean, it was terrible all around. And then it just went away, and it never came out, which is probably a good thing. But
and T-Mobile
I mean, that's
had
how they treat it, right?
Yeah, T-Mobile had the Z3. I think they had the Z2 and the Z3. I think, but the bootloaders locked, and they never got updated. They didn't exist in the store for very long either, right? Yep. Yeah, it's really sad.
I think the one thing that will help them though is there's still a niche of market of people who want smaller screen devices. So we're looking, flagship devices out there these days are all at least 5.5-inch screens. So there's still some people that don't feel like they need a screen that big, and for them this will be a very good phone.
Exactly.
That's true. But then again, like I said, kind of that amazing factor that Sony had going for it is the fact that it was a mini flagship, no compromises. And right now, I would argue that the small flagship is coming back, and it's even coming back in affordable flavors like this Honor 8 right here. It's very small, and I mean just the fact that $400 phones right now are putting out competitive build quality, because this phone has amazing build quality, it's amazing design, and competitive performance and battery life. That I think makes even the compact a tougher buy.
So Dan, you have what's probably the most direct competitor with the X compact, right? You've got an iPhone SE.
I had an iPhone SE.
iPhone SE.
Yeah.
I mean, which of those is a better phone, realistically, for most people?
I think realistically, I still think that the Sony is a little bit of a better buy. I think the main reason the Sony is a better buy is because you're only getting 16 gigs at $400 on the iPhone SE. You can get them refurbished now at Best Buy. I think they're like $240, which is an absolute steal. But you've got to remember, this is an iPhone 6S crammed in a 5S body. It is phenomenally fast. But we might trash talk the Snapdragon 650 a little bit because it's not an 820. It's not the compact with the flagship specs. But I think that the 650 is going to run a 720p screen all day long. We've
Absolutely.
seen how the 617 doesn't do too terrible on a 1080p display. So you've now got, and we've got to remember the 650 is running a Adreno 5 series GPU. So it's a current gen GPU. It's just, a lower spec one that's in the 820. I don't think it's going to have any problem running it. It's an octa-core compared to the quad-core that's in the 820, so I don't think it's going to have any performance problems. I think this is just, Yeah, this is something that just us who look at the specs are ever going to care about. I don't think a purchaser of this phone is going to care it's running a 650.
Is it waterproof?
I don't know.
Or resistant?
No, I think they dropped that.
Because the ZX or whatever still is, which is, again, a pretty cool feature. But
yeah, give me a quick second. I'm pulling up the spec sheet right now on them. It would be sad if they did drop the waterproof on their lines.
They did it on the X, except for the top of the line one.
Yeah, it looks like I don't have waterproofing listed here, so that's sad. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, well, like I said, I had the C5 compact, and Jesus Christ, that even with last year's bad processors, that was still a very, very battery efficient phone. The idle time on Sony phones in particular is insane, especially when you have that Sony stamina mode going on. Insane idle time, much better than those. Probably still better than the current Nougat improved those. So it's gonna be a good phone. It's not gonna get as many sales as we wish Sony would get in order to continue offering good phones. And at the same time, there's still this bittersweet relationship with Sony devices because they're grossly overpriced at a point where phones really, really shouldn't be. And if they are, they really, really got to bring it home and justify it through bringing all the bells and whistles, because you have the OnePlus 3, you have the Honor 8, you have the Accent 7, you have all these devices that are cheap, and they also target particular niche. Like the OnePlus 3 is great for people that want tweaking and customization and insane performance. And this is a pretty small phone too. And the Accent 7 has amazing audio, very good screen too, just amazing media experience. I think that they got to do better than that, especially in the value department. But if we're going to be speaking about grossly overpriced phones, I think it's time to talk about, I guess, our most incendiary topic of the night. The Note 7, we've talked about the Note 7 on the portal a lot lately. The feelings are mixed. We think that it's a great phone. It's a great phone for life, as Daniel said, a remarkable phone for life. But it's not a remarkable phone for people that want to customize, for people that enjoy good performance, or for people that don't have house insurance.
Yeah, we're all currently playing Russian roulette right now with these phones. I think there's been 24 cases per million devices, so 35 total cases reported. And pretty low percentage, but you got to give Samsung credit for, even though that's such a low percentage of units, that they said it's about 0.1% of units that are affected. They're still making it available. Right now, I can go back to T-Mobile, actually. They're working closely with OEMs, and I can get a full refund on the device. Any accessories I've bought, I could switch it out for a Note 7 or S7, or I could switch for a Note 7 later. Mm-hmm. So, Samsung definitely needs to get credit for taking swift action in this case.
So here's the question I have, though, right? Every phone that anyone ever buys, you can find some story where they, plugged it into a bad charger, their battery blew up. You could probably find 10 stories per phone that's ever been released in any significant quantities, right?
Yep.
So, you're talking about 0.1%. I mean, is that that much higher than what we normally get? Is there something else like that maybe they have suspicions about? I mean, what makes them go through such a massive effort?
On your train of thought, Eric, that's actually something I was reading in some of the forums, is that there's been rumors going around that Samsung has actually been looking closely at, they've been delaying some of the launches recently in countries due to inspecting the phones for safety. So this sounds like it's something that they might have gotten a tip on beforehand, that something went wrong in one of these battery manufacturing plants, and they had been trying to find these devices before things like this happened. So that could be why, we saw them go all out on this response. 35 phones have, detonated, I guess, for lack of a better word, but, they mostly just burned to a crisp. But 35 phones have exploded, but it looks like they're all in a fairly localized location. I could be completely wrong, but I believe they're all located in Korea right now. Whereas the worldwide launch, except for China, has been completely halted. No sales of the Note 7 are going on right now. So,
China doesn't have the issue. Okay.
China does not have the issue, exactly. So
they do get more RAM than us too.
Yeah, what the hell?
I think they discredited that, didn't they?
No, I thought they had the 6 gig version and then the 128, right?
I think they discredited that. I think it shipped out with the same phones that we get here. You can if somebody can double check on that.
We saw it on Tina though.
Yeah,
we saw it on the Chinese. It was passive and improved with 6 gigs of RAM.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
But
so it was not just a leak. Yeah. It was just a rumor.
Either way, though, I think like you guys were saying, Samsung's response has been swift with this. Samsung needed to get ahead of the story. The United States is, I think, a small part of the pie, whereas, this phone shipped globally, but the United States controls a large part of the media. And we're going on to a weekend holiday here. So had Samsung not gotten ahead of this the way they did in the last, 18 to 24 hours, they weren't going to get ahead of the story. And the media would have run away with it over the weekend, and Samsung would have had pretty much a gigantic fire to put out with Apple's events right on their heels on Wednesday, So I think that's probably why we saw Samsung's swift response to this. But we've got to remember the numbers. This is 35, out of almost, 2.5 million shipped devices. You have a higher chance, I think, like 3 or 4-fold of getting struck by lightning than you do having one of these defective phones. And it looks like they've all had issues while they've been charging. So if you are worried, if you go into settings, battery, advanced options, turn off fast charging or use an older charger so it doesn't get as hot while it's charging. And that could help, if you were going to have an issue, that can help that issue from, rearing its head. But yeah. I honestly think 99% of people are never going to be affected by this. I think it's something that's just going to blow over. But I think Samsung needed to act swiftly or they risk getting behind the story and just getting pummeled by Apple.
Yeah. Right. Keep in mind with the 35 number, that's devices that have already, detonated or whatever word we want to use. There's still probably devices that are at risk that still haven't had that happen yet. So I think the number that they used was 0.1% of devices are at risk of actually having this happen. One other thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this is the impact to Samsung. So a lot of people are speculating like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a huge setback for Samsung. But actually, we've been talking about it here, and it's not going to be that big of a deal for them because what they can do is take these devices back, verify that they're not defective, and then turn around and refurbish them.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, what I recommend, and everybody can do whatever they want to do regarding this. By the time this podcast goes live tomorrow, there's probably going to be more information about it. I recommend people don't turn your phone in. If you're worried about it, turn it off. Wait for more information from Samsung. They're identifying lots of devices, as in, bunches of devices that were produced at a specific time from a specific factory using that specific battery that are going to be prone to this. They're going to be researching. They're going to be figuring out which ones are prone to it. So wait a little bit to see what Samsung's response is. Or wait until, T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon, I believe, have all said new devices are coming in next week, which, again, makes me believe that Samsung was ahead of the game before this all came out. Hold on to it. Wait, don't use it over the weekend. Use a backup phone or just turn off fast charging and wait and see what happens. We're seeing on the forums, especially Reddit, a lot of people are going and just turning their phones in and having arguments with T-Mobile and their carriers. This is something that just broke today. You can't expect everybody to be on the 8 ball knowing what's going on, and things have been changing so fast. Just this evening, Samsung US outlined their replacement policy for the phones. So I honestly think just wait and see what happens. But again, this is safety, so whatever anybody needs to do, definitely do it. But try to be nice about it with your carriers.
I think that the biggest hit is definitely just going to come from speculation. We saw, I think it was something, their market value dropped something like 7 billion when this broke loose. But, if you think about it, they just launched their refurbish device resale program. They're going to obviously refurb this. They're still going to make money on refurb sales. And I don't think, what's really going to be the percentage of people that turn the devices in that actually exchange them? A lot of people are just not going to bother. A lot of people are going to, perhaps we're going to learn that some areas are entirely unaffected. So it is nice that they acted this way. And in a way, even just by acting this way, they made their situation worse in the stock market. But I think that they're going to weather the storm. The device is mostly excellent, but we must point out, because we don't want to give the wrong impression, we've also been having quality assurance issues. I believe that both Daniel and I are on our third note. So that's something that people should be wary of. Some issues that we found. well, first, my issues were very bad buttons. My first phone also came with a scuff under the glass, which was very disappointing because I unboxed this pretty phone and I found that there was a big scuff under the glass. So I turned that one in, and then I got one which had awful buttons and light leak. And we don't say screen bleed because that makes people think that it's something different. But light leak, Daniel, you can explain why that is because you had to return a phone because of that. So
yeah, so my two issues. The first one I had, Samsung Pay was completely broken on it. It wouldn't respond to terminals, and NFC was kind of wonky. So I replaced that one, and I got another replacement. And this one had a oddity on the bottom left corner of the screen. I can only call it an oddity because it looked like a glob of glue in the bottom left-hand corner. The weird thing is, though, I found somebody on Reddit that had the exact same issue in the exact same place. So I'll be interested. I'm going to try to compare our build numbers and dates with each other and see if they were built next to each other. Maybe it's a run that had problems. So I'm on my third one now. Thankfully, I was able to go from the black one to the blue one. But like you were saying with the light leak, the defective model was just pouring light around the outside of it. When I sent the picture to the T-Mobile representative, she actually thought that there was a second screen, like there was a black bar in the screen, and the screen extended to both sides of it. And I had to point out that it indeed wasn't the case. I'll put a picture up in the link. Yeah.
I had many posts about this on Reddit, and a lot of people thought that it was some light reflection, refraction, that it was just a natural property. To all those people, I say, get a magnifying glass and look at the edge. There's clearly missing paint, and there's clearly little gaps through which the display shines through. It's not the loss of physics, and it's not whatever excuse Samsung makes. There's tons of videos on the internet, and there's tons of videos where people have been issued responses about this, and they show very clearly that it is just the light leaks. It's not, it's not some Bill Nye the Science Guy kind of science experiment. It's just light leaking from the side of the screen. It's not a big deal. You don't notice it. You have to have it at a very specific angle to notice it, and you're mostly going to notice it at night. I wouldn't fret too much about it. It sucks. Sometimes it's worse than others, like Daniel, but it is, it's something that I think people should be aware of, just like they should be aware of the embarrassing performance.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. It's, and with the Note in general, I think, and now there's one thing I want to preface this with. When it comes to the replacement problem and also the Note 7 in general, you notice Eric isn't saying a whole lot. We are very divided at XDA on how the Note 7 is as far as performance. I admit it does stutter and lag. I've disabled, I think I've had 133 packages disabled right now. All the edge features, all the stuff that I just really don't care about. And for me, it flies. But it makes up for it in the long run for me. But I know Eric's been having some problems. That article I think it's safe to say it went viral. I heard about it on Twit a number of times, at least 3 different shows they talked about the article. So the Note 7 has its problems. Yeah. And I think this whole battery issue, it's kind of, it's sad. It kind of stains the story just a little bit more, but I still think it's a great device.
Well, for me, the story is that I have, as far as I can tell, a perfect hardware Note 7. I mean, I have no complaints about the hardware. I don't have any weird light bleed. My buttons are not driving.
Don't use that term, because then the shields are going to come out of the wood.
I don't think I've had any button issues. Nothing about the phone really bothers me except the software it runs. So it's the same story for me as it has been with the last 3 generations. I think they're gorgeous. I think they look great. The hardware's awesome. You can't beat the screen, and the vibration motor. I mean, everything's really well built. There's no question about that. It's just I can't stand this software.
But these are issues, these are issues that the build quality in particular, it's not quite true that Samsung has the most excellent quality assurance and build quality. In fact, I would go as far as saying that, that let's dispel this notion that Samsung doesn't know about build quality. Samsung knows exactly about build quality issues. So let's just dispel this notion that Samsung doesn't know about.
Sure, I mean, you're going to run into the things that you run in with any mass-produced device. I mean, they make, more than most, right? So the velocity that these things are moving through the factory may be a little quicker than some other OEMs too.
True. I mean, and they've improved, but it's true that every Note device has had a notorious build quality issue. With the Note 5, I guess it's probably a little less. Some people could argue, the S Pen, but I wouldn't say that. That's just,
that's not a build quality issue. It's just like a design blunder. But I mean, you're right. The Note 5 was great, like hardware.
But even then, it's not a design flaw because it was not designed. It was not designed to do that. So I mean, it's just anyway, but the Note 4 didn't have the best buttons either, and the Note 3 in particular. I'm not sure if you guys remember this. The Note 3 had a very wiggly home button, and every single Note 3 you could spin the home button so it would wiggle to the sides, and it will never look symmetric. It would never look centered. It would never look centered.
It was always cocked to the side just a little bit.
I know.
Was that a fingerprint scanner one or no?
No, that was before that.
Okay.
Yeah. But now the buttons are great. So
that brings back bad memories. Really bad memories. But yeah, I think the synopsis is that the Note is a great device for a lot of people. Watch this story as it unfolds over the weekend. One thing I wanted to say before we change to our last topic is this battery issue. Samsung is one of the biggest OEMs. It is the biggest OEM in the world right now. The Note 7 is one of the biggest devices in the world right now. Is this battery issue going to affect other companies? I believe Samsung SDI, who it's been rumored is where this issue started from, it's a subsidiary of Samsung, their battery supplier. We've seen a couple of Xiaomi, was it M4Is or M4Cs or whatever the new Xiaomi is,
blow up lately.
Yeah, and some OnePlus 3s go up recently. So it really makes me wonder whether or not this is an issue that, it's kind of like the airbag issue going on in the United States right now, where, they're starting to find more and more vehicles as they continue to looking that are being affected by this airbag issue. And this might be something that Samsung fixes and gets over real quick, but it might be affecting some of the other vendors that produce phones here for a little while. But it may not get as big because, the OEMs just aren't as big as Samsung is. So something interesting to watch on. I think the Xiaomi's blew up in the same ways that the Note 7s are.
But if there's something that might change, maybe, just maybe, and a man can dream, a man can hope, maybe Samsung will be prompted to bring back removable batteries next year. So
keep dreaming, Mario.
That would solve everything. But let's be honest. Let's be honest here. Imagine if the Note had a removable battery. It's just hand out new batteries. That's it.
Look, I'll be the guy. I don't want it at all. Like, not even a little bit. This thing is so much nicer than it would be with one. That's me, though.
I agree with Eric. I'm not a fan of removable batteries, but I agree with Mario. This is actually an argument for modular phones as well. Just pop off the module. You have a bad bin of CPUs that are melting down or something. Pop off the CPU, put on a new module. But we saw Project Ara got the axe this week, so it's kind of sad. It's kind of a sad moment for Nexus this week. A sad moment for Ara this week. Yeah, it's
sad moment for Samsung this week.
It's been it was a bad end to the week. I mean, we got the information about the 4K Chromecast and the Pixel phones and all this great stuff, but there was a lot of bad stuff that happened in these last 2 days.
Like the new Sony phone.
Yeah, but our last story here today, is good news for OnePlus 3 owners. There should be an article on XDA right now when this podcast goes live, an exclusive really for us. We've been speaking with OnePlus regarding their new community builds that they've been putting out. And, I asked one of the contacts we have at OnePlus what their future outlook was. A lot of the questions that I've been seeing on the forums, and they explained to me, and me and Mario, in no uncertain terms, that Hydrogen OS, which is OnePlus's Chinese OS, and Oxygen OS, which is what the US gets in Europe and a lot of the other countries, they're merging the two OSs. And this is for the main factor of getting software updates out faster. Samsung, HTC, they pretty much put out one particular software build, whereas, OnePlus has been supporting two different versions, trying to keep them both up on security updates, and they're still a small company and a small team. So,
they've done a terrific job so far. I mean, honestly, the OnePlus 3 is so much better right now than it was at launch in terms of features, in terms of stability and performance and battery life. I think that they really turned this around with the terrible track record that they have with both the OnePlus 2 and the OnePlus X. We just now got Marshmallow, and we already have Nougat. So they're turning it around.
It's certainly been a show to watch these guys do stuff, right? The OnePlus 1 was amazing, all around. It was a great value and it was a great phone. And then the 2 was not, it wasn't that great. It had a lot of issues. I mean, it never really hit off like the first one. And now the third one is back to being a pretty great phone at a pretty great price. But they've all gotten more expensive, correct?
What?
I think so. I think the first one was at what, 300, then 350, and then 400.
No, yeah, it's true. Well, yeah. They've been at 300, but
which,
but
I mean,
again,
I'm okay with that though, right? I'm okay with a $50 price increase because the difference between the 2 and the 3 is massive for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
but then again, think of it
every
this way: the 2, I think it was like 380 for a 64 gig version, and you already get a 64 gig version off the bat. There's, so at least you get that, and even then, the
and it's a fast 64 gigs too.
Yeah. And the OnePlus 3 is just such a great value that, it's redefined the conversation. It's redefined every single review that's come out since the OnePlus 3 came out. It's like they cannot ignore that the OnePlus 3 exists.
It's such a great value, Mario, that I bought 2 of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. We had so many OnePlus 3 devices at the office. I mean, my boss bought 2 as well. Amir just bought 1 too.
Yeah.
Did he get gold or black?
I think he got black. I'm not sure.
I love the gold. The gold is gorgeous.
So nice.
It's the champagne gold, not the yellow gold. It's a beautiful looking phone. But
it could have been very tacky, but they picked just the right shade, I think.
Yeah. But like you were saying, Eric, they've had their shortcomings, they've had their problems, and I think that they've fixed their hardware problems, they fixed their advertising problems, and software was their biggest problem right now. Like you said, the OnePlus X just got Marshmallow, and it's not even an official build, if I'm correct. It's still a community build.
Yeah, community.
So that's way behind, and that was one of the questions that I asked Eric over at OnePlus that we were speaking with. Was are you guys going to be improving? The software upgrade times, and definitely read the article that we have on the portal right now regarding the updates, because that was a big reason as to why they decided to merge the 2 OSs. And it might take a little while to work out the bugs. A lot of people and myself are using the community builds. There's Chinese translation that's kind of wonky in it. The color palette is really weird right now. They're going to be fixing that.
Yeah, they're going to add a stock color palette toggle. So
you know what I noticed from the OnePlus 2, one of the few experiences I had with it was the community build stuff you're talking about. I think it was an early Marshmallow build, and it was fine on time, right? I mean, it was a great community build for the time. It was fairly early if you count that as an official, OTA, which it's not. But I mean, the process of flashing it and going through it was pretty easy, So to me, that's sort of a better middle ground than just waiting 6 months or whatever. Then you're going to wait with some of these other OEMs, right? I mean, if you can get, you have that choice at least, right?
And
it doesn't void your warranty. It doesn't void your warranty, and like I said, it was easier than flashing some other custom ROMs. I mean, you really just went there and followed the 6 instructions, and you were done.
Yep. And with the OnePlus 3, they're actively taking the feedback from consumers who are using these community builds to make it better. I talked to him specifically about the black theme being broken, no more accent color ability to change. It was stuck on sRGB, which I prefer, but a lot of people like the color adjustment that you had originally. And they've added almost all of those things back in with the new 0.1 update that just came out.
This new responsiveness has been really odd to witness, because at first it was Anantech getting mad at the lack of an sRGB, and all of a sudden that's like the hugest issue in the world. So they're like, okay, and they fix it pretty quickly, and then now it's sort of the reverse. Like, people are mad that the blown out colors won't be in this new community build, and they're like, okay, I guess we'll put it back in.
Yeah.
So it's good to see them mature. Definitely take a look at the article. And if you're using the 3.5 builds, definitely give your feedback to to OnePlus. We'll have the links in the article for you to provide your feedback to them. Even if it's a feature improvement or a feature change, leave that in there, because they are looking at them. And this is, he said it was an open beta. It's very pre-release, so they are still adding features into it. We don't know when 3.5 is going to be finished. They are working on Nougat, but it'll definitely take some time. We haven't seen any other OEMs really making too much progress. I think the LG G5 had a Nougat preview come out a couple of weeks ago, but we really haven't heard anything since. So I think, maybe they might be waiting for 7.1, what all the other manufacturers are doing, or, kind of a wait and see. We know Google's event's on October 4th. As we wrap up here, so that's something to definitely look forward to as well.
Yeah, it's also interesting to note, just like a quick shower thought. This will be their 4th OS since they launched the OnePlus One, because they have the Cyanogen Mod 11S, and then Oxygen OS, Hydrogen OS, and now we're getting this Water OS. I don't know what to call it. Anyway.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with that, and it's really cool to hear that they're listening to the community and actually making these changes and being responsive. So, as Daniel mentioned, there's definitely a lot of events coming up next week. that we're looking forward to are in the next few weeks here and even into October with the new event. So I think that's all the topics that we had to discuss today. We talked about the Pixel phones and the renaming and potential implication to the Nexus program. We also discussed a lot of news about IFA, a lot of smartwatches and things happening there, specifically with the ZenWatch 3 and the S3. And then transitioning to what is the most debated controversial news so far, the Note 7, and specifically the Note 7 battery issues and how Samsung has responded to those. And finally ended with that interesting OnePlus scoop about the combination of the two OSs. So as I said, we're looking forward to the future. Lots of good things on the horizon to talk about, but that'll do it for this week. I'm Corey Fiok. You can find me on Twitter at Codismsdev, where I've got an interesting video up there, actually, where you can see what the Note 7 facial scanner, or the iris scanner, actually looks like under a camera. It's got a pretty cool laser pattern to it, so go ahead and check that out.
And I'm Daniel Marchena, Ultimax98. I'm active on Twitter, and I'm also very active on Reddit. So ask me any questions you guys have. One other thing I wanted to mention. And it totally slipped my mind. Yeah. I know. Before we do our next podcast, you guys think Aloe will be out?
I don't think so. I think it'll be October probably. I think that's what we. Well, I don't know. That's Google Home's release date, but we'll see.
I don't know. If we don't get Aloe soon, I think we're going to have to riot.
Yeah, I think Android Circle Jerk is going to just evolve and just spill over into the Android subreddit. And
you can just use Facebook Messenger with their brand new video chat client they just added.
Yeah.
And I'm Eric Holz. I'm at Simplistic at Twitter, and you can find me on the portal as well.
And I'm Marcel Ferro, editor-in-chief at XDA-Developers.com. You can find me at Takyungan. You can find me on Reddit as well. Or you can read my amazing editorials at the XDA portal, and I'll see you next time.
Later.
Bye.